You know, normally I try to stay away from other people's I Ching consultations on Reddit, um, because often when I show my view on the hexagram, you don't get any reply and it feels like a waste of time. But you are showing a willingness to learn how to do it. You're not just looking for an interpretation of a hexagram. You want to learn more about how you can interpret the answer from the I Ching. So I thought, let's make a video about that, because when I have to type it all out, that takes me more time than making a video about it. So here we go. This is my way of looking at the hexagram and looking at an answer from the I Ching. And I have to emphasize that this is my way of looking at the hexagram. And there are many other ways of looking at the answer from the I Ching. But this is how I analyze a hexagram and look at the text. So I have to emphasize that this is my way of looking at the hexagram. I'm doing it my way. I'm sorry, I'm getting carried away. So this is just one of the many options that you can try when you want to interpret the answer from the I Ching. And I always start with the hexagram itself. I don't start with the text. I start with the trigrams and moving lines, if there are moving lines. And I follow more or less a fixed pattern or strategy in that. I start with the lower trigram, and the lower trigram, I often see that as the subject who is consulting the I Ching. And in this case, that is you. So, and that's what I often take as a starting point. Lower trigram, that's the person who consults the I Ching, or that's the subject of the consultation. And the upper trigram is everything outside of that subject. So in this case, you're the lower trigram because, as you said, the consultation was about your personal situation. Well, if I had consulted the I Ching about the President of the United States, then he would be the lower trigram, and everything outside of him would be the upper trigram. So that could be the country, it could also be the world, whatever fits the context of the question or situation. So, but this is about your personal situation, and in that case, I see you as the lower trigram, and you are trigram fire. And fire has to do with commitment and also building relationships and passion. What do you want to connect with, and what fuels your fire? And fire has to do with seeing things. It has to do with the eyes and how you try to objectively look at yourself, because it's the lower trigram, which is you, but also trying to find the right motivation to connect with your own principles, your own truth. Fire is very much about finding your own truth and what is important to you, these things that you can connect with, that you can cling on to. And that is in the current situation important for you. You need this kind of fuel that enables you to use your fire and your own vision and your view. So you're looking for ways to connect. And if this was about building a business, then it could have to do with networking and building relationships with like-minded people. If this question is about, romantic relationship, then fire has to do with your passion and how you connect to this other person. And dragon fire means that this connecting is for you very important, and there's something not going quite right there. It's not really optimal here, but more about that later. So you are dragon fire, and that automatically means that the other party, assuming that there is another party, because I'm not that familiar with your situation and you didn't describe your situation, but most of the time there is another party. And when often my experience is that when people say, well, this was about my personal situation, that they often mean it's about relationships. So, but maybe I'm wrong about that. So you have to try to find your own way in what I'm telling you here, because I'm not entirely sure if I'm really correct, because I don't know your situation. But the other party, because you are the lower trigram, that automatically means that the other party is the upper trigram, so OP, other party. And that other party is Thunder. And Thunder wants new beginnings. Thunder wants fresh new start and a radical new start, and doesn't like to look back. It prefers to start all over again. And it also wants to do that in a very quick way, drastic way. And that other party is also struggling with that. And this is more or less, although that's not the best description here, but maybe it's a little bit the conflict here between you and the other party. You want to connect because you're fire, but the other party wants a drastic, radical new beginning and wants to start all over again. And that makes it a little bit difficult for you to connect. So I hope this makes sense so far. But as you can see, both trigrams have moving lines. And to me, these moving lines mean that these trigrams are out of balance. Not very much, because each trigram only has one moving line, so that's not really much of but that's not really a big deal. But nevertheless, there's something going wrong there. Well, I'm not wrong. I'm struggling with finding the right words, because wrong sounds a little bit too heavy for me. But there are some slight adjustments necessary. And with fire, when we change that moving line in the trigram fire, we get trigram thunder. Well, isn't that interesting? Because we have already seen trigram thunder, and that's the upper trigram. So, which could mean that if this changed trigram thunder is what you need to regain balance in the trigram fire, because that is how I see these changing trigrams, that it could mean that you actually need this other party, because the trigram fire changes into trigram thunder, and for me this means that you need trigram thunder to restore the balance in trigram fire. Trigram fire that is unbalanced clings a little bit too much. It's a little bit too much addicted and has it's struggling with letting go. It's struggling with building a balanced relationship. So it's clinging too much to what it thinks is important and what it wants in the relationship. And it needs trigram thunder, which can, in this case, can point to the other party and also focusing on what the other party wants, which means, or could mean, a new beginning. But with trigram thunder in general, it could also mean that you, for yourself, you need a new beginning to find the proper way to connect and to build relationships. So what you need is a new start. And that doesn't mean that when it's about relationships that you have to break up and start all over again. But it means that in this situation, you need a fresh beginning, a new start. And, this third line is at the top of the trigram fire, which means that the trigram fire is more or less exhausted. So you're more or less at the end of your capabilities of connecting and building relationships, etc. And it could also mean that your fire is more or less dying out. You're at the end of your fire. So that is also why you need thunder, because thunder is ignition. It's a new start and starting the engine again, so that is what you probably need to find the right connection here, a new start and a new drastic new beginning. And that's also what the other party needs, because the other party is thunder. So if there is another party involved, then you could try to find a similar way of starting all over again that is gives you something that you both need. You both parties here seem to need a drastic new beginning, new start, and well, also a kick in the butt. So you have to wake up and see everything as if you are completely new to this situation. So, but that's about the lower trigram. Well, the upper trigram, thunder, also has a moving line, and that trigram changes to trigram earth. When you change that fourth line, the trigram changes to trigram earth. And earth has to do with nourishing and working with what you have instead of adding new ideas and new desires. You work with what you have already achieved and what is available. It's the trigram earth is the yin trigram, which could also point to the mother, if there is a mother involved. In general, it can also point to women in general. So let's just say that there's trigram thunder, and the party that it represents needs yin, which means being open, being receptive, and working with what is coming towards her. So that is what is trigram thunder needs to restore balance in the trigram, because trigram thunder here is imbalanced, which means that it is too much in a hurry and it is breaking things. It is the destructive, and because it's too much focused on change without thinking about the consequences of the change. It's only thinking, I want a new beginning and I want it now, and it should happen as quickly as possible. And I don't care if things get broken because of my need for a new beginning. I just want to start over, and I just want it now. It can also have to do with aggression and a destructive kind of mentality, and not in a very big way, but because there's only one moving line. If it would really be harmful, this kind of destruction, then I would expect more moving lines. But only one moving line means, well, there's maybe an element of self-destruction here. And what he or she, the other party, needs is nourishment and taking care and providing, because that's the trigram earth, and this person needs earth to restore the balance in thunder. So there are a few trigrams hidden in this hexagram, and these are the nuclear trigrams, and the lower nuclear trigram is trigram wind. And wind has to do, at least in my view, with communication and small steps, and working on the long term, planning, and also focusing on details that might be important. But as you can see, there are two moving lines in this trigram wind, which means that this trigram wind is completely imbalanced. And when trigram wind is completely imbalanced, it means that it is procrastinating and finding excuses to delay certain decisions, and which means that not really much is happening. So it's more or less a status quo, and the important decisions are being postponed for very insignificant and unimportant reasons. So And when you would change the moving lines in that trigram, nuclear trigram wind, you would also get trigram earth, which means that trigram wind also needs this idea of nourishment to restore the balance, so to restore the communication. So which actually could mean that in your situation, it's difficult to communicate with the other party. The other party also finds it difficult to communicate. And what you both might need here is trigram earth nourishment and looking at what the other party actually needs and what the other party also, what enables growth in the other party and also in yourself, of course. So I still hope this makes sense. I'm not sure, but anyway, that trigram wind is surrounded by these 3 lines. And these 3 lines are the so-called Bauti. The Bauti surround the nuclear trigrams, and they more or less block the nuclear trigrams. They prevent the nuclear trigrams from coming out, from manifesting themselves. So if you need trigram wind, then the trigram wind, the communication aspect in this situation, is being blocked by the lines that surround it. And these lines, when you put them all together, they make trigram thunder. Well, isn't that interesting? Because we have already seen trigram thunder. It's the change trigram. Oops, I said that, change trigram. And of course, it's also the lower trigram. So the communication aspect is very much being controlled by the other party, which is trigram thunder. And which makes it actually quite difficult to work on the long term, because the other party is so much focused on quick change that it's almost impossible to talk about the future and about talking about small steps, etc., and taking it a little bit more slow, because the other party is too much in a hurry and in such a way that's almost becoming destructive. So that's about the lower trigram, which to me has to do with communication. That aspect is being blocked by thunder. Let me get another color here. Rainbow, yeah, why not? Because we have another nuclear trigram in this hexagram, which is trigram lake. And trigram lake has to do with joy and finding pleasure in your situation, enjoying the situation, and finding happiness in what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve. It's not about responsibilities. It's not about making money. It's simply enjoying what you're doing, and you're not enjoying it because it gives you money or it gives you something in reward. You just enjoy the situation because you're very much in the here and now. And that is what trigram lake is about, enjoying your current situation. And as you can see, that is that aspect in situation is being is out of balance. It has 2 moving lines in it, and where am I going to put this? I mean, and that is changing it into trigram earth again. So as you can see now, there is quite a lot of thunder going on here, and there is a lot of need for nourishment and receptiveness and openness to restore the balance in your situation. So you're currently not really enjoying your situation. Trigram lake is surrounded by 3 other lines which block this trigram from manifesting itself. So the joy, the happiness is being blocked by something else. And what are these 3 lines? Well, this line, and this line here. And these 3 lines, they make, well, what do you know? Trigram thunder again. So this trigram thunder is to a large extent controlling the situation. It is controlling the communication aspect, and it's controlling your idea and your need for happiness. And so the other party, if there's another party involved, is very much in control of the whole situation. You're very much dependent on this other party, which probably also means that you are really in need of new beginning, which is also thunder. So it's time to start all over again in your situation. So, well, I'm constantly emphasizing this other party, and maybe that's not something that is how do you say that? I'm sorry, English isn't my native language, so I have to, sometimes I'm struggling with the words. But maybe there isn't another party involved in your situation. That's possible. But there's another thing in this hexagram which makes me think this hexagram has to do at least with other people and with building relationships, because, oh my God, which color I'm going to use here now? Let me see. I'm going for purple, because these 2 moving lines, they are both in this part of the hexagram, these 2 lines, and these are the part of the realm or the Sansai of men. The first 2 lines are from earth. The top 2 lines have to do with heaven, and the middle 2 lines have to do with men, with people, and how you deal with people, with other people, and how you connect with these people. And when you have these 2 lines moving, it often means that other people, which often automatically means relationships, that other people are important here. This is a situation about other people, or maybe one other person. So, but when you have the 3rd and the 4th line moving, which means you have the whole Sansai of men, of people moving, it means that you're struggling with that aspect in your situation. If you had the first 2 lines moving, which have to do with earth, it would be more about money and the concrete stuff, buildings, housing, that kind of things. And when you would have the first, the top 2 lines moving, 5 and 6, then it would have to do with heaven, which is more about religion, spiritual things, thoughts and ideas, that kind of thing. But in your case, everything revolves about building relationships. So that is something that makes me think that your whole situation is really about other people or another person. So anyway, that's as far as my analysis of the hexagram goes. So now we can look at the text. And I always start with the hexagram because it helps me to interpret the text of the I Ching, because certain words in the text might make me think of certain trigrams in the hexagram, and that can help me to build my interpretation of this hexagram. So I'm not saying that it's always the case, but in the very few and rare cases that I am struggling with the text, I can use the hexagram to fill in the gaps that I am struggling with, the words that I'm struggling with, or the sentences, because often these sentences can be connected to trigrams. So, well, in the line text of line 3 and line 4, and as you can see, I gave the Chinese original and Wilhelm's translation because you are using Wilhelm's version. There are some really strange things going on here in these line texts. It's not normal. what we see, the image that we see in the text. So let's look at the first sentence from the third line. It says, the underbrush is of such an abundance that, and then the second line, that the small stars can be seen at noon. You know, as I said, English isn't my native language, and I have not memorized the I Ching, so I don't really exactly know what the text of line 3 actually is of hexagram 55. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not entirely sure if I know what underbrush actually is. I have this idea about what underbrush is, and I think it's just the small plants, some kind of weed that grows under the trees or under the bushes. And so that's what I think underbrush is, but I'm not entirely sure. For all I know, it could also be some a kind of brush that people used in the Middle Ages to clean their underwear. I don't know. But what is important here, and I think that goes in general in working with trigrams and with the text, what is important is the image that the word gives me. And it isn't really important what the word itself actually means. What it means is the impression that it gives you, the image that it creates for you. And for me, underbrush, whether I'm right or not, doesn't really matter. But underbrush for me is small plants, weeds, unimportant stuff that is growing under the stuff that is important, the trees and the plants that you can put to use. And underbrush, that's not really important. But here, it's of such an abundance that you can see the small stars at noon. That's amazing. I mean, that you can see the small stars at noon, which means that it is completely dark. Well, as many authors by now have found out, this line is probably, and also the other lines, are probably about solar eclipse. Because that's the only way when at noon it can be so dark that you can see small stars. And this is something that Stephen Marshall used for his book, The Mandate of Heaven. It all revolves around hexagram 55 and the solar eclipse. That's not really important for you to know to start working with the text. What you have to realize here is the image that is painted here with words. And what we have here is underbrush, which in my book is really insignificant, unimportant stuff that is so abundant that it is covering all the light in such a way that you're going to see small stars at noon when the sun is at the highest point. It's really ridiculous. So with this shows that the situation in your case is quite abnormal. That's just a simple conclusion that we can draw from this piece of text, because there's something happening here which is not normal. So the underbrush, that's this insignificant stuff. That is the details that are not really important, but there is too much emphasis on details on your situation, on small stuff, small irritations maybe. And that is blocking all the light from the sun. Well, we have the sun in your hexagram because the lower trigram, fire, is the sun. So, and in this case, there's too much emphasis on details, which is blocking you, which is blocking your light. So it's very difficult for you to show yourself because there's too much emphasis on unimportant matters in such a way that you can even see the small stars. And small stars aren't really important. these aren't the big stars. These aren't guiding stars. Small stars are not given any names because there are simply too many of them, and you can't easily build constellation out of it. But now these stars can be seen, so there is emphasis on things that are not really important. And that is part of the situation that you're in. And that also reminds me a little bit of the nuclear trigram. This is really going to be a mess of the nuclear trigram here, wind, because wind has to do with details and looking at details. And there's too much emphasis on details here. That's also why this trigram wind has two moving lines, and which makes this trigram wind unbalanced. Too much focus on details and procrastination, etc. So, and the consequence of that is that he breaks his right arm. This is happening because of this. It is breaking your motivation, your how do you say that? Your means, and to do something, to get into action. You're breaking your right arm, which means that you are more or less can't find the right word. Well, you don't have any means to act. Well, you still have your left arm, but if that's not your the arm that you normally use, then you're still struggling with finding the right way to do things because you're not used to do things with your left arm. So you're being maneuvered in a position that is completely out of your control, and that needs to be adjusted by less focus on details, and this trigram thunder with new beginnings, and also this trigram earth we've seen several times with providing nourishment and the proper kind of nourishment, and that's what is needed in your situation. I'm still wondering if this all makes sense. Anyway, we'll just continue. The fourth line talks about a curtain that is of such fullness that the pole stars can be seen at noon. It's still an abnormal situation, but in this case, a curtain is being used to block the light, and that's actually what curtains are for. So in this case, the situation is slightly less abnormal than in the third line, but it's still strange to close the curtains in the day. But in this case, it is actually deliberately being done. The curtains are being closed to block the sunlight. So, and they're doing that so they can see the pole stars, which are guiding stars. So sometimes it is necessary to block your own fire and your own attachment, and to let go of your attachment. And when you maybe even, although I'm not really fond of that word, maybe even your ego, to block your ego, to see the guiding lights, the lights that are actually important and that can point you in the right direction, because pole stars are guiding stars. They point you to the north, and you can use them for orientation. So even though it's still strange to block all the sunlight in such a way that you can see these guiding stars, sometimes it can be necessary to do that. And as a consequence, when you do that, when you see the pole stars, then you will meet your ruler. I'm not really fond of this word ruler, by the way, in this case, but it's not a wrong translation of Zhu here, which means ruler or master, but it can also mean the subject of the consultation, and can also be it can be the topic of the situation. So what you consult the I Ching about, in this case you will meet it, and which of course can also be this other person if there is another person involved, and which in Wilhelm's translation is of like kind. So that is actually what is needed in this situation, and that of course gives ye good fortune. So and that is actually what is needed here. It's okay to put yourself second place sometimes for a small moment, if that helps you to find the actual guiding star, the actual guiding point, what is actually important, and to prevent you from focusing on the things that aren't important. So, but you shouldn't do that continuously. After you have found your guiding star, the pole star, then the curtains should be wide open. And you should be able to use your fire in a balanced way. So, yeah, well, this is how I would look at the hexagram. And as I said, I'm not really familiar with your situation, so maybe I'm completely interpreting it in the wrong direction. But even then, I hope you get something useful out of it, something that shows you how you might look at a hexagram. So, well, thank you for your time, and see you on Reddit, and have a nice weekend. Bye.